Jambo Jama. Greetings, kindred, and welcome to the Pan-African Congress Movement TV in conjunction with African Spiritual Thought. We welcome you to this very special topic that we're going to discuss with our beloved teacher, scholar, and activist and priest, MZ or Elder Professor James Small. And this topic today is going to be entitled The Power of African Sacred Science. But before we begin, as is our tradition, we should also always give thanks to the power, to all the powers and the ancestors. And MJ Small, if I could kindly ask you to say some words in order to set the intention and spirit.
Yes, please. I would just want to bring.
So yes, please bring the drum forward and let us please guide us.
Yes. Asante Sana, peace and blessings, Hotep. Before we talk to our ancestors, we want to present to them some refreshments. And you should always, when you pour in libations, because I notice people do it the wrong way, the first libation is to hold the cup up, but you don't pour. That is to the divine. And then you pour, asking the ancestors' blessings to the north, asking the ancestors' blessings to the south, asking the ancestors' blessing to the west, and asking the ancestors' blessing to the east. And we ask our ancestors to please bless and guide our mind, that we may bring forward to our people an understanding of the deep spiritual knowledge that we have gathered over all of these centuries. And so we ask them to bless and guide this discussion today, and to lead us to bring forth the kind of wisdom that is useful in your daily life. We praise your ancestors individually and personally, and we praise our united ancestors, which leads us back to divine itself. And they like sound, and you know the sound that they like most of all is this one. So we've asked the ancestors to come into our space, to guide us with their energy, that we may inform and instruct you in the best way possible.
Asante Sana, MZ.
One thing I like to tell people on some occasions, because always I use my great-grandfather and grandfather's name from the Americas, the small, but I'm known in other circles as Nana Kofi Mpansa II. And that's my Akan stool tradition. I'm Obenjoko Adebayo. That is my Yoruba priesthood tradition. I'm Niahito Okropong. That is my Ga tradition. And then I have my secret name, which I will not share, of course, because it's a secret name. But all good priests should have a secret name, that they share only with the divine. So I will follow your lead, and let's try to take people on as much of a journey as we can into the spiritual realm of our people.
Asante Sana, Shukamo, as we say in Kiswahili, which I give you my respect, my elder. So that is beautiful. Thank you for that teaching and that guide. I don't know, my name is Ndugu Imani, and I'm an African spiritual life coach and also a member of the Pan-African Congress Movement. So again, so honored to have this time with you and to share with you. And we've just had, just going through Africa Liberation Day. That's this very special time from around the 25th of May. and set up by the coordinated by the liberation Organization of African Unity and their Liberation Committee in the 1960s, I think in 1965, and they set Africa Liberation Day as the 25th, and so that we would focus upon the continent, and the diaspora would focus upon liberating Africa, but also, at that time we had physical colonialism in place. Azania wasn't free. There was still people fighting in the bush against the colonizer.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and so and, and
Limo.
so exactly, I'm saying. So, we've now come from away from that, and the African Union now said it's Africa Day, but we have kept it as Africa Liberation Day because we don't see ourselves as free, even though physically independence is supposed to be there in Africa. We know that colonialism and neo-colonialism is very much in place. And this conversation was having about the power of African sacred science or African spirituality, as you've taught, it's not quite the right term. African sacred science is the correct term. We're seeing such amazing things in the Sahel, and we're seeing things with Chad and Namibia and Tanzania and Senegal. Even the Prime Minister of Barbados is saying very Pan-African and strong things. So, MJ, can you give us a way to kind of understand that what we're seeing manifesting, how that is strongly linked, or is a manifestation of African sacred science, even when, some of us don't even understand what that is?
Okay, I think our first discussion should be about what is African sacred science.
Yes, please.
We say in many of our languages that we are God, we are the divine, having the human experience. And some look at that and says you've gone too far. Others is trying to grasp what is meant. And so we must go back and think and let our mind imagine when the only thing that existed in the world was the divine, when the only thing that existed in existence was the divine. And so I'll start by going through one of our old books, our old text, the pyramid text. And in our Genesis story in the pyramid text, as translated by Theophile Banga of Congo Brazzaville, Anthony Browder, myself, and others years ago, it goes like this, and this is the divine speaking. I create myself out of myself. I cause existence to exist so that existing might exist. And when I found that I, Amen, existed, Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity was at my side. I cough up Shu, meaning I coughed up the air, and I spat out Tefnut, meaning I spat out the gases to create cosmogony. And having created cosmogony, the cosmos, with the gases and with the air, with the moisture, they then created Geb, the earth. And Geb, and after they created Geb, they created Nut, the heavenly bodies. And the energy of the heavenly bodies with the minerals of the earth created Asar Aset, the human family. Now this is before there's a Genesis book in the Bible, Torah, or Quran, or any of those things. This is
Absolutely.
thousands of years earlier. And when you read our story, you see how it was plagiarized in modern religious texts. And then God says, I created Ptah, the primordial hill, which means
Hmm.
matter. And then I
Ah,
created Ra, which is the sun, or represented by the sun. I created energy. And
energy.
matter and energy created everything else. And after, and again, this is Amen. Amen
Hmm.
is that which you cannot know,
Unseen and hidden one. Hmm.
but you know it exists because everything else come forward out of it. This is from the pyramid text. And then he says, having created everything that my heart desired, I, Amen, expanded in them. But he doesn't finish there. Now, it's that our text said that God says, I am in everything
Hmm.
that was created of me. And then he says in the end, and I came forward from my mother. Yes, it says, I came forward from my mother,
Mother.
Noon,
Mm,
the black,
yes,
melanated, undifferential matter.
matter.
Okay. That's in our text. That is a dissertation on quantum physics.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And how beautiful it is.
And so when we say we are God having a human experience, we're saying when the universe decided to manifest itself
Hmm.
as human, it manifests as a black woman.
Mm.
And she gave birth to all other things human, having been given the energy from the divine itself. And so from the very beginning, we see the mother, God, and the child,
Hmm.
Aset, Haru, and Asar. And we will see that replicated in other religions throughout Asia and eventually throughout Christianity in Europe,
Hmm.
where the birth of this child that would save the world. In our case, he was called Haru. The
Yes.
West gets their word from hero, from
Hmm.
our Haru. And so studying history will erase the Europeans' mystery.
Mm.
Studying history will erase the Europeans' mystery so that you can have a clear pathway to your ancestral understanding of the sacred science of the universe, where cosmology and ecology marries one another to produce all things good for us. So one that says, Small, what are you talking about? I'm talking about eating sunlight. You says, oh, why do the Africans use the sun as the symbol of God?
Hmm.
Because we must eat sunlight. Well, how can you eat sunlight? It's pure radiation that will burn you up.
Hmm.
Because the atmosphere of the earth, of the ecology we live in, takes the energy from the
Hmm.
cosmology and turns it into fruits and vegetables that we can
Absolutely.
ingest. So if you want to
Exactly.
eat good for the blood system, you want to eat some beets. And it has energy that is peculiar to cleansing your veins. If you want to strengthen your eyes, you eat carrots. It has
Hmm.
beta carotene to strengthen your eyes. If you want to strengthen your mind, you eat spinach. All of these things take the energy from the sun and transpose it in such a usable way that it serves every aspect of the human anatomy. We don't think of it like that,
Mm.
but we eat these different foods to provide certain minerals, proteins, certain sugars, amino acids, and so forth and so on.
Yes.
But all of the energy that makes these foods come from the cosmos,
Close.
not just the sun. Everything that's lit in the Milky Way, eventually that light gets absorbed by the things on Earth and by our very body itself. You see. And to go even further, we made up of almost 75% water with the beautiful
Hmm.
moon that's circling around our Earth every 30 days, 28 to 30 days, having primary control over the tides of the earth. Thus, it has primary control over the waters in our bodies. And so the
Yeah.
ancestors understood this. We never had a religion in Africa. We had a sacred science
Mm-hmm.
body of knowledge about cosmology and ecology and how the human fit in that. And our culture was a daily explanation of the relationship between ecology and cosmology. A daily explanation, because the people's culture is their primary education system. So, what is it you primarily being
Mm-hmm.
educated about? It is your relationship as a human being
Yes.
to ecology and cosmology, and how to keep the harmony and balance between yourself and them, so that you can be in healthy, what they call ma'at in the ancient times, where you can have harmony,
Mm-hmm.
balance, truth, justice, and reciprocity to govern your character, not just your character towards the next human being, but your character towards every plant, animal, fish, and bird that lives on this earth. Your very character behavior towards the earth itself, towards every tree, every plant.
Mm-hmm.
That was our sacred science body of knowledge. In that body of knowledge was the healing arts and the herbal arts and what they were all used for in the healing dynamic process. All of that canopy of knowledge of cosmology and ecology is what we call African sacred science. The methodology for how we use it
Okay.
is what we call African spirituality. And I'll probably try to take
Aha.
one piece. I love the Yoruba metaphor. And in the Yoruba metaphor, we
Yes,
have
please.
this great king, Shango, which is one of my
Mm-hmm.
orishas. And a Shango is
Mm-hmm.
the king. He's called an Alafin. He's the king of the state. Well, of course, the king has
Mm-hmm.
lots of power in its hand. And the king must, above all people, have truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, and balance in his character. Otherwise, power
Mm-hmm.
will corrupt. And as the world have said, absolute power will corrupt absolutely. And so, in the
Yeah.
story of Shango, in the Yoruba metaphor about qualities and attributes, Shango represents that quality in the human being that yearns for change. It yearns for change and transformation because it realizes itself is as a contradiction in behavior based on ego, arrogance, greed, power mongering. And in the
Mm-hmm.
metaphor, Shango, who's the king and he's got all of the power, he tells his younger brothers, I will share power with one of you, but the two of you must fight to the death. And I don't think he realized what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
So the two brothers fight, and
Mm-hmm.
one is killed by the other. Then Shango realized, oh my God, I'm responsible for killing my own brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden he realized being a king where power dominates rather than ethical moral consciousness dominates, he has wreaked destruction on his family, destruction on the kingdom, and destruction on his own soul. So he runs into the forest and he hangs himself from a tree. And there's a
Wow.
saying, a quote, Obakoso, Obakoso, Obakoso. The king is not dead, the king is not dead. No, the king is not dead because Oya,
Mm-hmm.
Oya, which is the feminine principle in nature,
Mm-hmm.
represents change in process. Once Shango recognized himself in the mirror for the negativity that power had allowed him to bring forward,
Mm-hmm.
he now begs and desires for change in his character because he saw the destruction of the negative character. Oya cuts down the body that has surrendered ego, that has surrendered arrogance, that
Mm-hmm.
has surrendered anger, that has surrendered hatred. And now she will marry that aspiration for transformation she being the change that will take him through the process. So Shango marries the beautiful woman, Oya, who can transform herself into an antelope or anything in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And so Oya realized in order for Shango to be redeemed, she must practice polyandry and marry the warrior god Ogun, the god of iron, the god of war. But the greatest thing that Ogun is the god of transformation of the human spirit and the human character.
Right.
So once the desire for change marries change in process, meaning Shango, the desire for change and transformation, will now marry Oya, change in process. Oya will now marry Ogun, transformation as a result of change. You get that,
Yes.
right? And why would we use Ogun, the god of iron or the god of war, to represent transformation? Well, the symbol of Ogun is that he's the god of iron. How do you get iron or steel? You take a piece of rock that's full of impurities and you put it in the fire and you burn the impurities out. And the process of transformation through change takes place. At
Look at
the
that.
end of the day, you've got steel, a
Yes.
usable element to build weapons, to build tools, and other things that will be helpful for building your civilization. So as much as Ogun is the god of iron and god of war, Ogun is more the god of transformation of the human character. So the desire
Right.
for change marries change, change then marries transformation, which is the result of change. And that's
And this is
three
so
of the
beautiful.
multiple metaphorical angels. People call them deity, but the Africans did not call them. Orisha don't mean a deity. Orisha means force in nature,
Yes. Everything is
power
force in
in nature,
nature.
right? In the Akan tradition, they call them Obusum. The Obusum represents the forces in nature.
Just like the
In
Nata,
Haiti, they call it the
forces of
Loa.
nature.
Yes, the Loas represent the different forces and powers in nature. It's quantum physics, people. What the Western world did through Greeks and Rome having invaded our civilization in Northeast Africa, Kemet, and Ethiopia, they stole our libraries. They stole our chapels. See, we didn't have churches. Those were not temples. Those were universities that they're now calling temples. And
Yes.
if you
Please
look at
talk on
all of the
this.
tools, you
Please talk
see
on this.
they copied our temples as their universities, libraries, and museums. And so they took our information and they took the sacred out of it and kept the science. In their ignorance and backwards behavior, when Rome fell, it was lost. But the Islamic civilization that occurred in Northeast Africa would discover our libraries again. And through the Africans of North Africa, whom we call the Moors, they will take it back to Europe again, open universities in Spain and what is now Portugal, and educate the new uprising elite of Western Europe and created what Europe called its Renaissance, based on African sacred science.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And
For
so,
700 years they
yes,
taught.
yes, 700 plus years we are there teaching them. And when they rise up, we were able to teach them the science, but we couldn't imbue in them the spirit.
Exactly.
They have done
Exactly.
well with learning the science, but not having the spirit on how to appropriately use the science, they've wreaked havoc across the world, genociding probably millions of people over a thousand year plus period.
Yeah.
And so
It's
when we
yeah.
talk about African spirituality, I'll back it up. When God decided to be human, nothing existed but God. And if nothing exists but God, what are the rest of us? We exist as aspects of the divine essence.
As Europeans say, QD.
Let me say that again. We exist as aspects of the divine essence having the human experience. When the greater light gives off from itself smaller lights, each of the small light contains the totality of the essence of the greater light.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So we are the smaller lights being
Yes.
given off by the greater light. But what can it give off except itself?
Itself.
And so in the
Exactly.
process of life here on earth, when our parents, our mother and our father, give birth to us, they give birth to themselves. What else can they give birth to?
Mm.
Your mother and father gave birth to you. They replicated themselves. So that makes you the ancestors in this time.
Mm.
When your children come, they will be the ancestors in their time, and you
Right.
will become the ancestors of their yesterday. Our parents and grandparents is us yesterday.
Okay.
Our parents
Wow.
and grandparents, they are
It's
us
so beautiful.
yesterday. We are them today.
Mm.
So there is no beginning or
No
end.
end.
This is African cosmology now. This is our system of understanding reality before we met the enemy. And he decided that the first thing I must destroy is the shrines. The
Mm.
first thing we must destroy is their concept of divinity. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing we must destroy is their concept of creation. The first thing we must destroy is their understanding of their relation to the earth. And then we can impose in their intellect our concept of those things: Christianity, Islam, Judaism. And for all the years we've known them, they've been committing genocide and genocide and genocide on every continent in the world, those three religions, wiping out animals, plants, humans, everywhere they went by the
Mm.
millions. And yet we bow to them because we've been made so ignorant of our own way of understanding reality and made to be afraid of what would happen if we don't submit to their way of reality. We go along with the genocide. Like, how many people are screaming out on behalf of the women and children of Palestine that is being bombed and starved and murdered and genocide every day? And we walk on along to our soccer game, our baseball game, our football game, our basketball game, like nothing's happening. We fill
Mm-hmm.
the stadiums with the concerts and we dance and shake our bodies while those babies are blown apart by bombs every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we pay homage to the religion of the people dropping the bombs, the people who are making the bombs, not understanding that we are out of our sacred mind. And we are now in their backwards, uncivilized, limited mind that they call educational intellect. But I am the divine that you call God having the human experience. I am my mother and father because when they
Mm.
gave birth to me, the only thing they were able to give birth to was a replication of themselves. And when
Just
they were
like the
given
all.
birth to by my four grandparents, they gave my mother and father forth as a replication of themselves. And my four grandparents was a replication of my eight great parents. And my
Mm.
eight great parents was the replication of my 16 great great parents. And my 16 great great parents was a replica of my 32 great 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 parents. And my 32 great parents was a
Mm.
replica of my 64 great 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 parents. It goes back infinity in the millions.
Mm.
I and you are made up of millions of other experiences, other memories in our DNA and in every cell that structures our body. We contain the totality of millions
Mm-hmm.
of people that we call ancestors because we are they.
Mm.
They didn't go anywhere. They could no longer live in the matter concoction we call the body, but they transferred before they left that matter into us. So some says, oh, small, that sounds very good. But what if you didn't have any children? If you know anything about African sacred science, that a child does not have to come from your womb to become your child. The very energy of love, the very vibration of your voice, the very rhythm in your touch could transform the DNA in the body of a child.
Absolutely.
And that child, though not coming from your womb, can be transformed as though it came from your womb, because you would transfer the energy of your womb into the very DNA construct of that child. And that's when we come.
And we see that in our language.
Our music, our language. You know, I remember when I first went to Ashanti and I heard those drums playing. And I go, wow, what beautiful drums, right? And I said, wow. Now, it wasn't the music. That was beautiful enough. It was the fact that the king of Santahene, at that time of the Tumfo Pokawari, is sitting there. And Bafo Kotu, who is a linguist, is standing next to him, whispering to him. What was he whispering? He was whispering to the king what the drum had just said in Twi, as a translation of what the linguist of the other king had said to the drummer in his language. So the drum was actually speaking the tongue
about talking drums
of the people. And I remember going among the Achimahini and the Achimahini people in Ghana, and they were playing the horns. And they used the horn of the buffalo. They used the horn to speak the language of the Achim people. The vibration, the rhythm could replicate your vocal cord. And the people can understand. Me, I'm sitting there, oh, what beautiful music, because I'm from America. But there in the Achim, it is serious business. They hear the horn. In Ashanti, they hear the drums, the vibration of nature. Every organ in our body have a different vibration. I didn't know that in America, and my wife was a physician. I thought we should know more. They feel your pulse in your wrist. But my first acupuncture treatment, they searched my body for 8 different pulses. I said, what are you feeling for? They said, oh, you Americans, you do 1 pulse. We do 8 pulses before we started treating, because we got to see what organ in your body is out of rhythm.
With the rest.
Then we know where to place the needles, because we know what organ is out of rhythm. You may say, oh, you have a headache, but there may be something else in your body that's malfunctioning, that's causing. And so they understand the rhythm centers of the body. And so that our brothers and sisters we call ancestors, when we were they, before we were we in this time. Right? You're with me, right? I'm here. I'm not going crazy out here. Because
no.
No.
We're totally with you.
I'm saying. Totally with you. Scientific method you want. My mother and my father gave birth to me through an intercourse and the sharing of sperm and eggs that contain the DNA that goes back billions of years and emanates from the divine itself. And so I become a replicate of all of those ancestors who were a replicate of the divine itself. Are you not then God having a human experience? Now, our African sacred science understood that.
It's at first when you say it, but it's not.
And not only did they understand that, they understood the relationship to the rest of the universe. So people say, oh, They're going into outer space. We live in outer space. We're a planet twirling around the sun.
Exactly. We're star seeds. We're made of cosmos.
Vibrating
We're made of
while it's
stardust.
twirling around the sun. And as a part of with the sun being a part of the Milky Way, we are sailing through space thousands and thousands and thousands of miles an hour as a part of the Milky Way.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even realize it. Huh? But our ancestors realized it.
Yes.
That's why the Dogon could see Sirius A and
Yes.
Sirius B
Yes,
star
they.
hundreds of years before the European invented a telescope and was able to see those stars. We didn't need a telescope because we understood the relationship between those stars and us. There's nothing in the rest of the universe that's not in us.
As above, so below.
As above, so below. That is a great truth. And so African sacred science wanted to create harmony in nature. In ancient Kemet, we said Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. In the Igbo, we say Omanele, harmony and balance within and without. In the Yoruba, we say Iawapele, the gentle character that comes from the harmony and balance within and without. And throughout our culture, that's the way we saw it. In the Ewe language of the people of Togo and of Ghana, they say Sogbelisa. Sogbelisa, meaning that the divine is the totality of creation itself. And we are simply aspects of this. Understanding this greater knowledge, we then broke it down into dances, into music, into rhythm, into healing processes that allowed us to use what we call culture, a university. That's what culture is for a people. It's the people's university. The language is your library. It's like a ship. It carries all of the things that a society needs. And so when our ancestors created those cultural things, Africa don't have multiple cultures. Africa have one culture.
Expressed in different ways.
Variations in interpreting the culture based on the ecology you find yourself in at the time the interpretation is made. So if I'm in the desert, certainly I can't teach the wisdom using trees and grass.
Yes, and rivers.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And if I'm in the rainforest, certainly I can't teach the wisdom using sand. And so depending if I'm in the savannah, the same thing. It depends on the ecology you find yourself in, the kind of tools you will use to teach the wisdom of the universe.
It's like the body. The body is of the same, is of the one system, but the little finger doesn't do what the heart does, but it's all been expressed.
Culture. There's one sacred science, mastering the cosmology and the ecology. We have different methods of doing that. But those methods are not, they're the cultures, they're cultural tools, but they're not culture itself. The culture is the wisdom of the cosmology and of the ecology. The cultural tools, dancing is a tool of culture, music is a tool of culture, language is a tool of culture. The tools of culture is then used to explain the singular thing, no matter where you are. And I'll show you that people have been trying to show you things, and we have not paid attention because we have been brainwashed and masked by Western religion, Western colonialism, and imperialism for hundreds of years. Anyone who would remember a movie by a young Asian named Bruce Lee? The movie was called To Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
It was a masterpiece. One of my favorites. But most people don't know why it was a masterpiece. They see Bruce Lee on the island and he's fighting the evil drug lord.
Okay, we're back.
But before you get to the island where the fights take place, his little sister goes into town with her uncle to shop. They get separated, and the rapists and murderers, hooligan, tried to rape her. Rather than being raped, she took her own life when she stabbed herself with the broken glass.
Mm.
When Bruce comes, he comes to avenge his sister. But if you watch
Mm-hmm.
in the movie about what Bruce Lee showed you was amazing, but most people don't know what he showed you. In
Mm-hmm.
African culture, as in Asian culture, when you die a violent, quick death, the spirit don't
Mm-hmm.
get a chance to ascend.
Right.
So you must make amends to allow the spirit to ascend
Mm-hmm.
from that
Mm-hmm.
violent interruption of life. So when
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Lee reaches the island and he sees each one of the potential rapists and hooligans that caused his sister to take
Mm-hmm.
his life, they show the scene of the sister taking her life with the glass. What Bruce Lee did was to loan his body and his fighting skills to the spirit of her sister so that she might avenge herself so that her spirit could move on. Right? And that's why it's called to enter the dragon. But people, what does that
Right.
mean? But
Right.
the
Yeah.
dragon in the Asian culture means wisdom. So what he did was
Yes.
opened up the wisdom. He allowed you to enter the wisdom, which might have cost him his life. He may have
Yeah,
opened
because
too
there
much.
was that is been said that there was some
Yes.
ancient teachers that said this is not supposed to be shared.
Yes. Now that's just one culture.
Mm.
In Africa, we see the manifestation all over the place. But if we don't study our folklore, if we don't study our ancient tales, if we don't study about our ancient forces of nature, which the West called deities, our ancestors never called them deities. If you study the African language, any language system, and look
Mm-hmm.
for the name for the person, people, place, or thing, people, person, place, or thing,
Mm-hmm.
you find that either the prefix or suffix is the same word they use for their God.
Mm.
This tells you from the very beginning they knew that God was in everything.
Absolutely. I didn't even think of that, but like in
Yeah.
Kiswahili, when we say people, we say watu.
Yes.
When we say the all, we say wote.
When you say
The
Bantu,
same
remember
prefix.
the white man had us ashamed to say Bantu?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he
But
did.
the Ntu means God. That's our word. NTU is our word for the divine.
Mm.
Bantu, Mentu, Ntu, Kintu. Person, people, place, or thing. But that
Amazing.
Ntu, God, is the suffix for each one of them. So
So
when we
MZ,
say,
and
huh?
in that point,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, if you don't have children, but they're very energy. You transfer the energy. It doesn't have to be blood. And
That's why
culture.
someone can touch you and heal you.
Exactly.
Something could be injured in an organism in your body. A good priest, a well trained priest, could take their very hands and put it on your body, transfer the energy from their body to heal something that is injured in your body.
Hmm.
Even the
Yes.
drugs, it doesn't have to be the human. Someone told me a metaphor years ago about a woman who could not get pregnant, and she and her husband had tried for 5 or 6 years. So the husband went to the the Babalawo,
Hmm.
and in Ghana that would be the um, the priest. The oh, my head's tired.
Hmm.
But he says we cannot have children. Would you please speak to the God on our behalf?
Hmm.
So the Babalawo said, "Okay, I will send you to another Babalawo who's far away. So
Hmm.
pack your clothing, pack your wife well, and go to this place." So it took
Hmm.
them a few days to get there, and he gets there, and he brings his wife, and he was unloading his clothes. And the Baba said, "No, no, 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 you don't leave your clothes. You go back home. You leave your wife here with me." He was a little hesitant at first, then he realized, okay. I'll try anything to have a baby. And
Mm-hmm.
so he goes away, and the wife is left, and he used drum rhythm. And it took a few weeks
Mm-hmm.
to use the drums to reorganize the vibration in her womb so
Amazing.
that she would be able to conceive. And then he sent for the husband to come and get her after some weeks. And so he gets her. He's like most men, he's skeptical. I left
Mm-hmm.
my wife even with the priest all this time. Maybe it's me who can't have the baby, or I
Yeah.
hope nothing adverse has gone wrong. But he
Mm-hmm.
gets home, and 10 months go by,
Mm-hmm.
and she shows no signs of pregnancy. So he
Mm-hmm.
realized the priest did not do anything adverse, but he's thinking, oh, something didn't work at all.
Yeah, yeah.
But in the 10th month, she stopped seeing her mens.
Mm.
And then she realized by the 11th month, I'm pregnant. And it says that they go on to have many, many children.
Mm-hmm.
But he changed used the drumming to change the rhythm of her body, so that her womb would be able to vibrate at the right frequency that it could hold that egg once the sperm had fertilized it. That type of medicine is still practiced in Africa today, except we call it juju and
Mm-hmm.
laugh at it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And make movies that defame it
Mm-hmm.
and laugh at our ancestors. How could you defame and make a mockery of your ancestors and expect to become anything in the world of significance?
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. But the point I wanted to lead you to is where we're saying that, we have this power to change and transform of those and what's within us. So those of us who are in the diaspora, or those of us who are on the continent, and we seem to have lost our way with, but do you think, can you explain to us about how in our very DNA and in our language, even when it's separated, the answers come through, even though
Yes.
we're not aware of it.
Even though you're not aware, you can never stop being what you are, even when
Hmm.
you don't, in your consciousness, realize that you're who you are. The organism realizes itself.
Hmm.
It's called ancestral memory.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So when I practice the martial arts, or I
Hmm.
think I practice the martial arts of the East, and one thing they taught us very early on is muscle memory. That you do a particular kata
Hmm.
enough times that you don't have to think about it. It remembers what to do when that circumstances appear before it. You know, so
Exactly.
you're thinking, "What do I do? What do I do?" You don't have to think what
Think.
to do. Your muscle remembers what to do. So we call it muscle memory. So if you take that same concept and take it back to your ancestral infusion of themselves as you, remember that now,
Mm.
infusion of themselves as you,
You.
then you're taking all of their memory. So you are a compilation of all of your ancestral memory. But if you don't have your own language and you don't have your own dance and you don't have your own music,
Hmm.
you stimulate that memory to release itself.
Hmm.
You don't have your own language. It'll seep through anyway because it wants to protect itself. It wants to be itself. And so we see the Malcolm X, we see the Patrice Lumumba, we see the Kwame Nkrumah, we see the in America, the Madam Ida B. Wells, we see the Harriet Tubman, we see the Yaa Santua, we see the Nzanga. Right? It'll always find a way when the crisis calls for them to gather. And remember, you're not just one person.
Which is
You're
which this
millions
leads.
upon millions upon
Mm.
millions upon millions of persons make you up. And the memory of those millions upon millions of intergenerational people makes you up. Language helps call them to fore. Our music and our language call them to fore. Our rhythm of our drum call them to fore. Our dance, the body movement. In many systems, you can see if I move my hand a certain way and my arms a certain way, I stimulate certain organs. If I move my hips a certain way, I stimulate certain organs. I move my legs a certain way, I stimulate certain organs in my body, from my kidneys to my bladder, to my heart, to my liver. And so we know that dance is not just moving. Dance is a releasing of negative energy and an absorbing of positive energy from the human body and into the human body. You know? That's why we always say other people don't have rhythm.
Rhythm.
They have rhythm, they just don't have our rhythm. You can take a 2-year-old child and start playing some music and have never taught him anything but dance, and that child will dance in sync with the rhythm of whatever music is being played.
Yeah.
If that child is African. I was watching a piece tonight where a 70-year-old woman was celebrating, African woman, was celebrating her birthday. She was on that dance floor looking like she was 16 years old. You know?
It is amazing. It is amazing when we see
we need to study ourselves again. And they didn't, what we call Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, they didn't invent anything. They took our thing and tried to adapt it to their culture without having a deep understanding of the thing they were trying to adapt.
As you said, they took the sacred out of it.
Yes. Leonardo da Vinci paints a beautiful picture of the Christ with the 12 disciples. How many people ever look at that picture?
I haven't studied it too tough.
Some people eating food. It's called the Last Supper. And I doubt if Da Vinci called it the Last Supper, but somebody did eventually. But we think of it as the Last Supper. But look at the picture again. The man is sitting there with light coming out of his head. We call it a halo. Does not that tell you the man's mind is the sun? And in this symbolic rendering, is saying that your mind is acting in your environment the same way the sun acts in the cosmic environment. And the man is sitting at a table with 12 other people. But if you look good, the 12 people is broken down into 4 groups of 3s talking to only each other in that group of 3s. So what you have is the 4 seasons and the 12 months. Okay? Yes. It's a cosmic drama being explained. You also have the 12 signs of the zodiac. It's an even deeper cosmic drama being explained to an ignorant European or illiterate European population that does not yet read. So this is their hieroglyph explaining cosmology to them. Check it out if you think I'm playing right. But
I've got it in my mind, and now I'm thinking, I'm thinking of it, and and thinking about what you said about martial arts, because I've studied martial arts as well. I've practiced martial arts, and again, what you say, from your very first concept when you said, let's first understand sacred science and about a moon going into itself and expressing itself. It all just feeds back again and again and again, that same story.
Ancient Nubian books with the Meroitic script, you will see algebra, you will see geometry, you will see chemistry. All of this comes. They got us in all of the museum. If you're in the UK, you don't have to go far. Go to the British Museum. You will see the Rhian mathematic papyri inconspicuously sitting on a wall in a corner in the Nubian exhibit with no explanation of what you're looking at. other than a little tiny sign. Yet it's the most important mathematical book in the history of the world that is known. Now, the Ashengi bones of the Congo, which is much, much older, but isn't as well known
Wow.
as the Rhine mathematics.
Wow. Much, much older.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
the Ashengi bones of the Congo. If one would study and pay attention, the civilization that becomes Kemet or Egypt comes out of the southern and the central part of Africa. And from the Nile is
They
moving
said so.
north. And so they follow the river.
We come from the mountains of the moon. Mm.
Yeah. And there's two mountains of the moon, Mount Rwenzori and
Right.
Uganda
Mm-hmm.
and Kilimanjaro in Kenya,
Mm-hmm.
Tanzania.
I know that one.
Both of them are ice cap mountains. Both of the ice cap mountains melt
Mm-hmm.
and drains into the river. But the river starts even earlier than that. It starts at Lake Nyanza, which they call Victoria. And much of that water is
Mm.
drained out of Mozambique, Malawi, and Congo, and then go north.
Wow.
And it picks up the White Nile out of Uganda, and it picks up the Blue Nile out of
Mm-hmm.
Ethiopia, and it all crescendos together, meeting up in Khartoum, and continues north.
In Kemet.
So we need to just study our history and get rid of the enemy's mystery. Something happened recently that should have told all Africans
Mm-hmm.
who we are. They had a
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, and the whole world is saying, well, Africa
Yeah.
is going to die. Africa is going to be wiped out.
Yes.
Africa don't have access
I've
to
said this so many times.
Africa is going to be gone. And everybody else left except the Africans. They were dying like
I know
flies,
Africa just went on with its life.
you know,
Yes.
and yet they got quiet.
And the only places that really hit were the places that had become so Europeanized. So in Southern Africa, it
And
really
even
hit very
then,
hard.
even in
And in
those
North of
places,
Africa, it hit very hard.
yeah. But even in those places, it was minimal compared to the way Europe and America was hit,
Oh, yeah,
you know.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
so they got very quiet about that. Why didn't the Africans get sick? And when they got sick, why were the survival rate higher than ours with all of our technology and all of our medicine and so forth? Because our bodies in Africa know something they don't know. It's the things we eat,
Exactly.
the way we eat it. It's the time in the sun. It's our bare feet on the ground.
It's ground, the very land itself.
Yes.
As you say,
So,
we eat the sun,
and
we're
we
taking
eat
in
the
all that
sun
energy and that
all
cosmic
day.
energy
Yeah, vitamin
all
D
day.
is super. But if we understood just the basic science, when someone gets sick, whatever medicine they give you anywhere in the world is to replace something. So there's a deficiency of something, and that deficiency is causing the ailment. And so we will supply you with that deficiency. The difference is Africa may go and get that supplement by a bush that we crush up in a hand or pound or mix with some other oil. But they would take that same bush to America, break it down chemically, and create a synthetic version of it out of some materials that's going to do more to kill you than the disease you're trying to fight.
Very much like religion.
I went to Harvard University once, one of the greatest they got in America. And a young friend of mine who was in a Akamfo, a priest in the Ghanaian tradition, the Akan tradition, took me to the herbarium. You know what the herbarium was?
No,
The tallest building on Harvard campus.
Right.
And what it has, a room for every African country, where they got the herb and the fauna of that African country being studied there to see what is its chemical and medicinal qualities. And then Harvard then sells that formula to the pharmaceutical industries.
Wow.
But they send their grad students to come among us to be our brothers and our friends, or we will sleep in your hut with you. We would sleep in the village. We would work in the field.
Ah,
But teach me about this grass. Teach me about this fauna. Then they take samples of it. Just
right.
simply, you put it between two newspapers and you dry, and you'd be surprised how long it'll live. And you go back to America and you say, what does it contain? But first you talk, they'll tell you they talk to the witch doctors.
Mm,
Now
yeah.
they're supposed to people with all the medicine, but they got to come to the witch doctor. Find
Mm,
out what did this herb do? What does this
mm,
stone do? What does this grass do? What does this
mm-hmm,
berry do? Then they take that knowledge and write it up as a dissertation for their PhD.
mm-hmm,
And the knowledge gained from the chemical breakdown of the plant is sold to pharmaceuticals so they can make medication to sell back to you in Africa while they tell you, oh, stop going into that botanica because that's not good for you, right?
mm.
And we, because we're confused, we've lost
Listen.
the way to our ancestors and we hung up on their fantasy God. You hung up on the God of people who are dropping atomic bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You hung up on people who saying they're serving Passover and the
Mm,
Torah, who's dropping bombs on little babies and women in Palestine, and you
mm.
still believing as they believe. How could you, if the God they brought to you don't humanize them, how's that God going to humanize you?
I know you've got to go, MZ. And can you
I don't
can
mean to be hard on people's religion, but it's
mm,
the same with Islam. You know, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Kul huwa Allah ahad, Allahu samad, walam yalid, walam yulad, walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad, Allahu Akbar. They're saying in it that God is one, he begets, none knows he begot. Meaning, same thing we were talking about all along.
mm,
Who exists? Just God. That's what the Quran is saying. Who exists? Just God.
God,
Nothing can exist but God. So what is the rest of us? Aspect of that
God.
existence. And so it says nothing gives birth to you, nor are you giving birth to none. Right? Guess where you first see that prayer? Not in the Quran. You will first see it as the hymn of Akhenaten, pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Kemet. O soul God, you who have given birth to none, and who was
Mm,
given birth to by none,
mm,
and I, Akhenaten, am your servant alone as you're the one God. There's no Moses yet, there's no Quran yet,
mm.
and yet you have the prayer of Akhenaten that acknowledges the Ik class, or that is acknowledged by the Ik class in Islam.
Right.
So study your history, you will erase their mystery.
And just on a final point before you have to go, because this has been such a masterclass, and I was just so happy just to just let you talk and just reveal this because it's so beautiful to go into deeper understanding.
Mhm.
Can you just start to talk to us a little bit about how we are seeing sacred science and spirituality start to manifest in the Sahel, in the rise of Pan-Africanism, in
Mhm.
the with the rise of as we're all saying, Thomas Sankara has come back. We have seen it in Goethe, in Tichani, in Ibrahim Traore, and in other places. So
Don't
make
put too
that
much
link.
on Thomas. Thomas Sankara
Hmm.
was himself an ancestor come back. Thomas
Yes,
Sankara
as
was
you
Patrice Lumumba.
yes,
Thomas Sankara was Emekal Cabral of Guinea-Bissau. Thomas
yes.
Sankara was Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana.
Fantastic point. Fantastic point.
And so when we think of Sankara, and I'm blessed, I met Thomas Sankara. I sat and ate dinner with Thomas Sankara.
Well, I'm honored
Unfortunately,
to talk to you.
Blaise Compaoré was sitting right next to me. Was murdered
Mm,
to be, you know. Sankara had come to the UN in America, and he wanted to visit Harlem, and he was brought by the Patrice Lumumba Coalition to visit Harlem.
right.
And Ilambe Brath, who headed the Patrice Lumumba Coalition, the president said he wanted to visit a campus where there were Black students. I happened to be the head of the student union at the time and a member of the
Mm,
Black Studies Department at the City College of New York under the
hmm.
leadership of Dr. Leonard Jeffries. So we
Yes.
said, bring the president to
Praise
the
to
college.
him and his
The,
wife.
the Negro president of the college and the vice president refused to meet with him because America never said he was persona non grata. They treated him like he was. And you know, Thomas wore his pistol everywhere he went. And so when he came to the college, they would not greet
Ah,
him. So I had to go out and
like
greet the
Ibrahim
president.
Traore. Always walks with his sidearm.
Yes. And I
Right.
went and greet the president, me and Dr. Lenny Jeffries. And he spent the whole day with
Mm,
us. Such a beautiful spirit. And when he was murdered, you know, our hearts was torn apart because we sat right beside
mm.
the murderer and didn't know it. I know people warned him. He had been warned 2 or 3 times, but he wouldn't believe it. Even
Is it?
Jerry Rollins told him, now intelligence show that this man is going to kill you. And he would not accept it because
But
that
this man
man
was like his
grew up in
brother.
his house
He's
as his
in his
brother.
family, isn't it?
When Campari's father died, Sankara's father took him as a little boy into his home and raised those 2 boys together.
Wow.
So there you saw the Cain and Abel story play out, you know, where one betrayed the others for money
Set and Haru.
and power. The same thing with Set and Asar, which was a metaphor in history
Yes.
that you must be aware of this possibility and guard yourself according. And
Just
thank
like
God it appears that Abraham Traore is guarding himself
yes.
appropriately and according to the past. But what we are seeing now is the manifestation of African
So we are
spirit.
seeing the
We're seeing the resurgence of
yes.
ancestral spirits in the young people of
Yes.
Africa
Please talk on this.
because they're tired of drowning in the Mediterranean. They're tired of being slave in Libya. They're tired of coming over the border in Mexico and being locked up in prison in America like dogs. We don't even hear about thousands of Africans
Mm,
got in those prisons. And so they want to see
yes.
the Africans that they want to see for their children, that they want to build for their children. But the only way you're going to see that Africa, you got to turn back to the way of your ancestors. And it is clear when I hear the brothers in the Sahel speak, they have reached back to their ancestors.
Hmm.
Now some say, oh, but they're Muslim.
Absolutely.
And so I says, really?
Mm, yes.
They're
Talk on
Muslims?
this.
Yes. Islam is a way of life that Africans created initially. Another
Hmm.
one of their prayers is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Rahman ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Iwa iyak nabudu iwa iyak nasta'in. Iladini and Nasirat al-Mustaqim. Iladini and Amtalahim. Kama bibilwahim wadadalin. Amin. And he's saying that there is, you know, that there's only one path. There's only one way of righteous behavior. There's only one kind of conduct you're supposed to have.
Hmm.
That's an African thing. Even the Prophet Muhammad
Mm,
said, I come not to bring a new religion, but to restore that which was in the beginning. And
right.
so study even that history, because our brothers and sisters in West Africa, they don't lean towards Mecca in the way the Arabs lean towards Mecca. If you go to Senegal, they
Hmm.
have their own holy places. You go to Touba, you go to the Grace Mosque
Hmm.
and Sheikh Mbeki and all of the other great leaders before him. And they revere them because Islam don't tell you to go to Mecca. It tells you if that's something you are able to do without bringing hardship on yourself. Now, I've been to Mecca.
Hmm.
I forgot one of my names. I was Al Hajj Amin Shahid
Hmm.
when I was an imam. I was 18 years an imam, and then I retired.
Hmm.
And I began to go more deeply into the indigenous ancestral traditions that
Hmm.
gave birth to Islam, that gave
Hmm.
birth to Christianity, that gave birth to Judaism.
We give
Those three
thanks.
places are just fragments from the periphery of African sacred science. Our sacred science was so powerful that when our scientists was sent by the leaders of our governance to study the cosmology, and we will take care of you. We'll make sure you have food, clothing, and shelter. But we don't have time to study. We have to plant the cotton. We have to do the linen. We've got to make the fishing boats. We've got to build the houses. We've got to keep law and order. We've got to provide the food. We've got to ground the wheat, etc., the barley, etc. We got to pick the grapes. So we don't have time to look up at the sky and study, but we will pay you, great scientists, to do that. But then you have to come up with a way to teach us that isn't as complex as what you're learning that you're calling astronomy. So it's the African astronomers that creates astrology to explain astronomy, the cosmology, to the masses. And the
That's
first
why they
place
crack
you
the
see
myth.
an astrology is in the temple of Dendera
Yes, I've heard
in
of this.
Kemet. Now the French went to try to steal it. They carved the ceiling out and dropped the darn thing in the Nile. But the good thing, they had taken the pictures of it and painted it, and it was replicated in other temples that they were able to replace a replica in Dendera.
Right, it's a
But
replica, right.
bring it back, you know, to the most basic science and the most basic shrines in our community. That our medicine, our science of the environmental sciences, our cosmological sciences were all one package. They were not decentralized. They were one garment. And they each part of our understanding of our ecological and cosmological science informed the other. Our healing science was related to understanding the cosmology, as well as understanding the leaves and the fauna and the berries and the bush that we had to use, and the roots that we had to use. And I was blessed to have been raised by a traditional priestess, you know, who we call in America root lady. You know,
yeah, you say Gullah Geechee is your people, the Gullah Geechee, the Gullah people?
Yeah, that term, but I'm an African first, Gullah Geechee second. Yeah. So I'm from South Carolina. I'm a Gullah Geechee from the Maroon community, but we call them Freewood Africans. I want to use the word that white people really call us back then. We were the Freewood Africans. But every village had their indigenous priests and priestesses, even today, even now. But all of modern science, they still have them. And when nothing works in Western medicine, that's who people go to.
Yeah, same in throughout the Caribbean.
Yes.
Same in Africa. We may hide it, but we always but we go to it, no matter how Christian you call yourself or whatever.
Bring it back to the center. What's wrong now, our people are through the major Western religions and through the philosophy and psychology of Western primitive science, we have developed a mimetic infection of Western culture. The only antibiotic for the mimetic infection of European backwardsness is to return to African culture.
And when we say mimetic, what's that? Again, that
means that we have been infected with the value system and the worldview of someone else.
Absolutely.
Their worldview and their value system. Remember, your value system and your worldview produces your values, your interests, and your principle that you governs your daily life by. But we've been infected by the meme of somebody else's culture. And the only antibiotic that will work is to go to that of our ancestors and be inoculated with that body of knowledge, with that understanding, so that we can again reconstruct ourselves, not just with our hairdo or our clothing or our new suntan, if we think we had gotten too light being in the West, like myself, with all this red. But I always tell people, brown ain't nothing but a shade of black. You know? So we go from the blackest black to the caramel without ever encountering another race. And so when we understand that our ancestors, people say, well, if we had all of this, why did we get beat? Because we weren't murderers. We didn't kill just for the sake of taking life. If we had a war, in many instances, I will send my hero out to fight your hero.
Yes.
The rest of us were support systems. We didn't go out and slaughter each other. We
Water.
began to do that after we encountered the Arabs and the Europeans and got involved in this foolishness that they brought us into from the time that the Ottoman Turks took Kemet away from us in the 9th century, at the beginning of the 10th century. That's when things started falling apart, not in 1492.
Yes.
By 1492, things had fallen apart. And it was
Yes.
just a mopping up thing that the white man came from the West with his Christianity in partnership with his brother with Islam, and created this mess. For 1,500 years before the transatlantic slave trade, we were being sold into China, the Indian Ocean, and into Europe. There was a
Yes.
trans-Saharan slave trade, an Indian Ocean slave trade. There was a Northeast Africa into Southern Europe slave trade before 1492. When the Christian, Portuguese, and Spanish and Dutch came, they simply tapped into a system that was
already existed. Indeed.
The whole reason why West Africa is Islamic had to do with wars. Mali was not an Islamic kingdom. The leadership in Mali was Islamic, but not the people of Mali. Ghana, Ghana was not Islamic at all. It was destroyed and overthrown by Islamists coming out of Morocco.
And the same could be said for Songhai, I take it then.
Songhai was a little more Islamic, but you don't really get Islam until you look at the great what they call it, Jahid, but the fighting mode. When you are conquered, when you're carrying on an Islamic war, jihad. So the great jihads of the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s.
Yes.
That's when you see Islam comes into West Africa and into Sudan in the way it had. And one of the greatest jihadists was a Nigerian brother named Shehu, and he felt, and he comes down through the Cameroons, he comes down through Nigeria, and we need to study that history. We need to study the history of the people that the West and the white man call us Moors. We never call ourselves Moors. Get that straight. We never call ourselves Moors. The European calls us Moors. The people of North Africa were the Gudamas and the Caramanti. Okay, they weren't Berbers. That's a white man name. The Gudamas and the Caramantis. And their civilization is the civilization they're now finding in the Sahara, older than Kemet.
Right. We really do need to study this. There's so much here. MJ, I could sit for another couple of hours with you, but I know you got things to do.
We are God having the human experience. Our problem is we've lost our memories.
Yes.
How do we restore the ancestral memory? You restore the ancestral memory through learning the language again. You restore ancestral memory through practicing our rituals again. Like in the Akan tradition, they have something called a Kwesidah. I love a Kwesidah. Because why you love a Kwesidah? That's when we go to the cemetery, we remember our ancestors, we clean their graves, we pour libations for them. And once a year we have bigger Kwesidah. We remember the total ancestry of the community. And we dance and we drum and we drink refreshments and we enjoy ourselves. And asking the ancestors, we pour libation. The reason you pour libations is to tell the ancestors to come. The ones who create you, their energy still exists, even though their bodies are gone. We're telling them, come as yourself. Join us. Join yourself, that was your future. And let us join with ourselves, that was our past. And let's dance together and sing together and drink some wine together and enjoy and celebrate ourselves together.
Amazing.
We're just
one. We're just one.
So
MJ, I know you've got things to do, and there's some things I have to
sleep. Now, I have been up for more than 24 hours thinking.
You need it. You need it and deserve it. Yeah, you got to look after that knee of yours. But so we're going to bring it to a close. Thank you for sharing this wisdom. It has been a great honor, and we can't wait to share this with the family. you know, so they can see
Just
the
remember to
certain.
tell the people, know that you are your ancestors. When you pour libation, you're pouring to yourself.
To yourself.
Ancestral memory is the key to opening up your consciousness to the rest of the universe.
There's the thing. There's the thing. There's the thing that we'll end on, and key the key to the whole discussion. So, as we began with the ritual, can we close with the ritual, the closing, to end in the proper way and give thanks to all the power of the ancestors who've blessed us to be here and be us and talk through us.
So, we ask our ancestors just to bless and guide us, to give us the light of understanding. There's nothing mysterious. The only thing that's a mystery is the thing you do not know. Once you know, it's not a mystery anymore. We are the knowers, not the believers. So we want to come to being the knowing sign, not the believing sign. When you know what you know, believing becomes irrelevant. So become knowers, not believers. And we beg you, please, ancestor, give us your memory more and more every day. Give us your guidance through memory more and more every day. Give us your light into the world. Let us see you as you come from the source. Let's look backwards and see the pathway back to that same source. So bless and guide our babies who are out there fighting this revolution. All over Africa, we see them in the streets all over the world, holding up Brother Ibrahim and holding up Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And we thank you that Chad has now asked to come over to this side. And we thank you today that the ministries in Senegal have asked the French to be gone by September. So we know that your mission is growing. We know that your revolution is growing. We know that ALD is becoming real. Asante sana.
Sana, Ashe, Ashe, oh, Santi Sana, Santi Sana. Go well, my dear elder. I give my
Thank you very
regards to
much.
your whole family circle,
I'm with you
and
for the last month.
to thank you so much, and to the whole family, and to MZ Jeffries and MZ Rosalind, and to the whole ASCAC family as well. We love you, we respect you, and we thank you so much for sharing with us and giving us so much over the years. Asante sana. All right. Kwaheri. Sleep well.